Good evening, everyone. This is Radio Free Mormon. 5 seconds after being notified that, yes, he is in charge of tonight's Mormon Newscast, welcoming you to tonight's Mormon Newscast, together with Rebecca Biblioteca and Bill Reel. Greetings to both of you.
Greetings, RFM. And in my defense, I did tell you you were in charge like 3 hours ago. So
I don't know why you took that as a personal attack. I didn't even mention you, except to introduce you.
Yeah. We're going to have to air this out later, okay?
Yes, okay. Anyway, I don't know where that came from, but proceeding with the show. Let's see. We have some stories, don't we? Do either of you have any announcements you'd like to make before we go over the list of stories we'll be covering tonight?
There are announcements in tonight's show, but I think we can make those later on.
Okay, really good.
Maybe just to say Happy New Year, everybody, right? This is the first newscast officially of 2026. So here we go.
You're right. And we are off to a heck of a start, aren't we? This thumbnail reminds me of the end of the dating game. If there's anybody out there old enough to remember what they did at the end of the dating game. This is January 5th. It's 2026. It's the Mormon Newscast. The Mormon Kissing Bandit is what it says on the thumbnail. And the top news stories for tonight in a new format. I like that. It's like retro, back to the 70s. Mormon CSA charge in Cody, Wyoming. Wife destroys evidence. Jesus, take the wheel. Primary president arrested, released, and released. LDS missionary passes away in New Mexico. New apostle watch. Got to be a new apostle called. Any day now, we're going to see that smoke. Evil influencer horrifies Netflix audience. Missionaries teach English, aka the gospel. And finally, are Nelson, President Nelson, former President Nelson, and Elder Holland really gone? Well, we'll be very interested in finding out if that's not true.
And I'll just say, too, that wasn't the correct order. This will be the correct order. I had two slideshows up. We were using the wrong one, just FYI. So there they are.
What you do to me when I'm in charge.
Yeah, we tried to throw you off. So this was not intentional, but, maybe.
It's like the Cain mutiny.
So there you are.
Okay, so that's the order of the stories. And we're going to start, though, I think, with the primary president getting arrested, released, and then released again.
Yeah. And I'll jump in here at the very beginning. We wanted to talk for just a second about the thumbnail. We've gotten a lot of pushback from folks saying that the thumbnail was, and some people thought was inappropriate for various reasons. And I'll just note to the audience that in creating this thumbnail, number one is that we're trying to attract believers to be able to tune in and watch the stories about their religion, and to some degree have to confront some of the unhealthiness that happens within Mormonism. A lot of our news stories, which tends to happen in high demand fundamentalist religions, often have a negative connotation to them. And this is one of them. And the picture that existed of this person was extremely bad photo. It was super blurry. So I needed to do some work on fixing it. And I didn't want to have a picture. I did want to draw attention to the story. I wanted people to know what the story was about. And I didn't want to have a picture of her kissing a kid. That seemed completely inappropriate. And so I thought her blowing a kiss would at least represent the idea of what was going on. And that when folks tuned in, that when we covered this story, it would be covered in a serious and appropriate way. In fact, Rebecca's got the story, so you can be absolutely certain that that's going to happen. And that's the reason why the thumbnail is the way it is. And so, folks, if you are bothered by it, I do apologize. This was what I thought was the best way to capture the idea of what happened and promote it in such a way that believers would maybe take a chance and tune in to see what was going on. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Rebecca for the rest of the story.
And on top of that, Rebecca has secured a blood oath from me that I'm going to keep the wisecracks to a minimum.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. So, but yeah, this I would say is the story that is everywhere in the media. I just pulled off a few screenshots here. You can see this blowing up, started, I think, Friday, Saturday going on. And, the headline is, things like Layton, school aide, is found kissing underage, all different kinds of titles like that. So we don't need to go into each one. But I will address the thumbnail for a second. One of the things I was going to talk about and am going to talk about in this story is just the idea of the difference when a victim is a male, a boy, and the victim is a female, and the comments and the things and personal messages that I got about the thumbnail, really kind of drove home that issue of there being a difference. So hopefully we can kind of discuss that as we go through these slides. So if you are not familiar yet with this story, like I said, there were so many different articles. I just kind of made a summary here. Basically, a Layton junior high school employee, like an office aide, not a teacher. They wanted to make this very clear that this is not a teacher. This is someone that works in the school, was arrested for allegedly kissing a 17-year-old student on multiple occasions. Now, it says student, but the school district also wanted to make it very clear that this is not a student at the school. She works at a junior high. This is Haley Ann Lunt, and it's not a student, but it is a 17-year-old boy. And this happened on multiple occasions in a way described as, and I'm guessing this is how the counselor would have written down the notes or the police would have taken the statement, not normal, social, or familial affection. So I guess maybe RFM, that's how they distinguish between a mom grabbing her kid and kissing him and something.
I'm guessing so. I've never heard
different.
of this law before, but it's very
No.
interesting. So I'm guessing the 17-year-old student is probably a high school student somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to say. Obviously, a high school student, but not connected as far as what that was reported on with the junior high where Haley Ann Lunt worked. So the employee is 44-year-old Haley Ann Lunt, and she admitted during questioning that she did kiss the student and acknowledged that he was under the age of consent. So they asked her, did you know that he was younger than 18? And she said, yes, I did. In another news story that was a video, they said that these incidents, at least a couple of them, because there was more than one occasion, happened at Sam's Club in Layton. All of this is happening like within 10 minutes of where I live. And I thought that was very interesting because that is a very busy place. Like there is no privacy there. That is a parking lot with cars zooming in and out all the time. There are other shops there. And so, I mean, it's a madhouse is what I'm trying to say. So interesting, if reported on the station is correct, that it was at Sam's Club in Layton. I thought that was kind of interesting. It goes on to say additional witness statements supported parts of both the victim's account and Lunt's admission. So you have the victim, the 17-year-old boy's story of what happened. Then you have Haley Ann Lunt saying, yes, 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 basically agreeing. And then you have some other witnesses somehow that are there. And in my mind, I think, could it be somebody that the young man told, or could it be the young man's parent? I mean, I'm just guessing here, but when it says other witnesses, RFM, obviously there probably wasn't anybody there seeing it. Could it be somebody that just was aware of the scenario or was told? Would they be considered a witness? Oops, I can't hear you.
I
Sorry.
intentionally muted myself.
Oh, of course you did.
I'm trying to keep that blood oath.
Yes.
Violating it is painful, I understand. But let's say that somebody didn't witness this. By the way, a reason does present itself to one's mind as to why it is that they might have had several encounters at the Sam's Club. I won't say it, but I think it's kind of obvious what it could be.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. But talking about what were we talking about? The age of consent, or what was it? Oh,
no,
about
I was just asking you that there were other witnesses.
yeah, so you got somebody who doesn't know. They didn't see this happening,
Right.
but they do know that she wasn't home at that time, or she had said something about going to Costco when she left. That would be, I think, what they're describing as witness statements supporting parts of their story.
That makes sense. Yeah, I know. And again, I think a lot of this is still coming out and they're trying to piece it together. It goes on to say Lunt is employed as an office aide at Shoreline Junior High School in the Davis County School District. She was booked into jail and later released with conditions. Do you know what that means, RFM? I haven't been able to find out what conditions mean.
I'm sorry, stay away. Yeah, stay away from that kid. Is what the conditions means, and stay no contact, either direct or by third party, in no manner. Stay a certain 1,000 feet. away from him or any place that he might work.
Okay.
And probably, look, I don't know, but it's up to the judge. They could say, don't be alone with any, you
Mhm.
know, minor person that you're not related to.
Yeah.
So it's kind of up to the judge, but yeah, they just want to try and make sure that they feel the community is adequately protected by the conditions they put in place.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. I also did read in one of the articles that it's a Class A misdemeanor,
Mm.
and what does that mean
It
exactly?
means it's a really big little thing.
A big little thing. Okay,
It's
yeah, I wasn't
misdemeanor
sure
being
where
the
on the
lower
scale.
classification of
Okay,
crimes, and felonies being the more serious kind. And I'm guessing Class A is the worst little, is like a gross misdemeanor in Washington.
okay. So does this mean then that I mean she was arrested, she was let go. There will be more appearance in front of a court. Though there will be more. She's retaining a lawyer, or is a misdemeanor so low on the scale that it was
It's
just
not
kind
an
of
infraction.
okay,
An infraction is something where jail time is not a possibility. It's just
okay,
a matter of a fine.
okay,
But when you get into a crime, which a misdemeanor is, then there's jail that's on the table. And usually what it is if you've got, at least up here, I'll give you an example. Simple misdemeanor is defined as the maximum penalty is 90 days in jail and $1,000 fine, or both.
okay.
A
Yeah.
gross misdemeanor is a year in jail and a $5,000 fine, or both. And then when you get above that, then you're into felony territory and you're in a different court system.
Okay, and that makes sense. And, it was when you talk about it being a misdemeanor, they did say in many of these articles that if I can say it was a French kiss, right? French kissing, a little more involved. There are different kinds of kisses. So that was something that was stated in the article. So let's go on to the next slide. So I, of course, was trying to find out, well, what is this exactly all about? Who is this person? What is happening? So I didn't change that one. Okay. So I went over to her Facebook page, which was still up, and she had just uploaded a couple memes, kind of, it seems maybe to encourage yourself. Let's see. One of them says, the first one said, the Lord is mindful of you, and so are we. Keep pressing forward. You're doing better than you think. Okay. So right away, I thought, okay, I'm guessing there's an LDS component, which is what I'm always looking for when there's a story. Is this something that affects the LDS or post-Mormon community? The next meme that she uploaded just really a couple minutes later says, remember, no man is a failure who has friends. Okay. So, needing support at this time. The thing I was actually really surprised at is that if you look at the next part of the slide, there were a number of comments in support, hearts, we love you, this kind of thing, which I guess if you did not understand or know the story right away, you probably would support your friend or somebody that you knew if you didn't know the details, the details that were coming out or anything. But yeah, I thought that was kind of different. So what I did next, of course, is what I always do. I wanted to find out, now I'm pretty sure that she's LDS or has some connection based on her Facebook post. And also I did learn that her husband worked for the church and she has a son on a mission, so
You say
things like
worked. Is
this.
that past tense?
No, works,
Oh, he does work for the
yeah,
church.
works for the church and has a son on a mission. And these are all things that are just on social media. You can find this out pretty quickly. Of course, this profile on Facebook has since been sort of taken down. A new name has been added to it, a different name, not her name. So that's kind of an interesting scenario. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. But so I wanted to find out, is she connected to the church? Does she have any callings that I could find out about? And I was able to find out that she is the sitting primary president in her ward, a person that works with youth, a person that is entrusted with youth, a person that has gone through training to protect youth, and we'll talk about that in a minute, a person who sits on councils talking about youth, a person who is privy to information, personal information about youth. I mean, primary, obviously, we're talking about little kids, but it's the same kind of thing. So I made a post and I simply said, primary president, LDS primary president is arrested. Then I thought it was very interesting what happened next. I thought it was relevant. Because just like the Davis County School District very quickly came out and said, This did not happen on school property. She has been put on leave. This has nothing to do with her role as a teacher because she's not. It's kind of like I was looking at it that way from the church. Is there anything to do with everything that happened in the church? Or does she have a role in the church where she works with children? And I was able to find out she's the primary president. So I had a lot of comments that said, okay, that's relevant and people need to be aware and we can't always trust people. And this is a wake up call. But then I had a lot of comments that said that has nothing to do with the story. Why did you post that? I even got a personal email here that says, remove your post about Haley Lunt. She was not a primary president. Well, she was a primary president. You are spreading false information. Sad that you have to stoop to clickbait, get a life, right? So just the range of responses was really, really interesting to me. Do you guys have any comments about that? Just the idea that is it relevant that she's an LDS primary president and has been arrested for, an alleged crime? Well, she admitted to it with a minor.
I think anytime somebody is being charged, alleged to have committed some form of abuse on a child, and a child is anyone under the age of 18 by the legal definition, that person being in close proximity with others that they could harm, I think that's always going to be relevant information.
Well, I think about who does this hurt? It doesn't hurt her at all that she was a primary president. I mean, that doesn't add anything, I should think, to whatever it is she's going through. And I suspect and hope it's quite a bit that she's going through with these revelations and getting arrested for this. I don't think that calling her an LDS primary president adds an iota to that. What it does, however, is it is thought by members to smear the church. And that's what they're upset about. They're mad about this being said because it shows who she was in the LDS Church. And they think it gives the LDS Church a black eye. And therefore, they're mad at you about it.
Can I say one more thing too, which is, what would it mean if we all outside and inside the church came to grips, and I think outside the church we have already, that there is just a whole host of people who hold callings that were given under the guise of revelation, who turn out to be unhealthy, have predations or thoughts running through their head to do things that they shouldn't, and they make decisions to do those things. What would it mean if people serving in the LDS Church, called by revelation, were just hit or miss like the rest of us?
Yeah, and that's a bigger picture there too, is discernment. And I think because it really did force me to kind of look inward and say, why do I put this information out? Why do I think it's important? And it is that a wake-up call about discernment, a wake-up call about just using good judgment, looking for red flags, things like that. And, I've heard from other sources now that she may have even been in other leadership callings like Relief Society president. So this is someone that's irreproachable, in a lot of circles. And I did have to ask the people that were commenting these things to me that I'm a liar or whatever. I had to say back, why is it so important to you that this person is not a primary president?
Yes.
And you prove that. Why is that so important?
Yes.
And the idea that, if this, and I had this conversation with, I can't remember who, a couple days ago about this, where we were saying, if somebody takes a drink of alcohol, people in the ward don't jump to defend them, so strongly, attacking whoever said they drank. It's only when it looks like a black eye on the church that they don't even really look at the crime. How many stories have we heard of the victim sitting in court and the ward is over on the side of the perpetrator? It's because they're defending the church. The person doesn't even really matter that much. So go ahead, RFM.
Here's the real important reason why you should do this is because the church is going to cover this up as best as they can. And if you or I or Bill or anybody out there was a parent in this ward with a kid who was under her direction, you would want to know it too. So you could have a discussion with your kid and see if everything was okay there. And the church doesn't do this So you putting it up is your part to do the right thing that the church continuously fails to do.
Yeah, I think that's true. I was not trying to be sensational. I wasn't trying to be clickbaity like I was accused of. I was literally trying to, drive a discussion and put out information and, thinking about the victim also and his family. I mean, this must be devastating. Can you even imagine? This is probably ripping this ward apart. So I thought about as a primary president, and she was just called in August 31st. She's only been the primary president for a few months. She obviously would have had to go through training if she
Um,
hadn't before. Yes,
Rebecca, it
go ahead.
occurs to me, for
Yes.
those out there who do watch, who don't know all the ins and outs of
Oh, that's
Mormonism, can
true.
you tell us what a primary president is over
Yeah,
what
that's
kids?
true. It's a female leader in charge of children under the age of 11. So it's the highest rank you can get as a woman in the church in charge of the children, basically boy children and girl children. You have a female leader in charge of women in the church, known as Relief Society president. You're right, it's a bunch of jargon. But what we're trying to say is that she was in charge specifically of children and had total access and total knowledge and stewardship over all the children under 11 in her ward. And so she would have had to go through training. And I looked up what you're supposed to do when you become a primary president, and it says complete the protecting children and youth training within 1 month of being sustained. So if she hadn't had it before, she would have had it again. And of course, it's all really good practices on how you deal with kids. But one of the important parts says avoid extended one-on-one communication with children or youth. And like I said, I've heard from several sources behind the scenes that there may have been, communications leading up to these actions that were finally brought in front of, law enforcement. So it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And it is possible that there'll be more information coming out. But some of my sources are saying there were interactions, communications going back, farther than what we know of now. So, but we don't know exactly. So I knew she was the primary president. I was called on it all over the place. I did learn that just yesterday at her meeting in the morning, she was released with a vote of thanks. And her entire presidency was released. And then the rest of her presidency, meaning first counselor, second counselor, secretary, were put in as the new president and leadership. So the LDS Church did what it had to do. There's some kind of legal action against her, and they released her. So that's kind of where it stands right now. But it is very interesting, just the different reactions that I'm getting, especially that bigger picture, like we talked about, that has to do with the thumbnail, where when a victim is a boy, a young man, it has a different way that you look at it. And it shouldn't, but it does. And, I raised all sons, and I saw up close and personal how guys often get the short end of the stick as far as a lot of things, and so I don't know. It was interesting to me just to do those mental exercises on what it means. I will say that she has 4 kids of her own. One of them is on an LDS mission, and I was able to somehow get a hold of a letter that he wrote home from the mission field, obviously very distraught, but telling everybody, please be kind, and wait for the rest of the story to come out, that kind of thing. And please don't gossip. Basically, I love my mom. And I'm not coming home from my mission. It was that kind of a thing. So, like I said, ripping all families apart, this is just devastating, to the victim's family and everybody. So any other thoughts on this? This is kind of where it is now. We don't know any more at this point, but there may be more to come out because as I'm being told behind the scenes, there is more, but I can't really speak to exactly what that is.
That's all you want to share from the email?
I'm trying to think if there was any other part of the email.
Like the threat part?
Yeah, well, and the young man also seemed very protective of his mother,
Sure.
and, said, I don't want to hear about any gossip, or I don't want to hear about any of this stuff, or, we'll have to have a kind of a discussion, when I get home from my mission. But he definitely said he's not coming home because, the work needs to continue. The Lord needs him there. So I'm guessing he's processing. He's of the age of this young man, the victim. Do you know what I mean? If he left on his mission when he's 18, it's got to be a
You might have
similar
known him.
age. You know what? There's all that kind of stuff where you figure, how does a mom know a 17-year-old kid? What kind of access? How do you come in contact with them?
I
Soccer
don't know.
teams,
Two
kids'
or 3
friends.
years ago in junior high?
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
I mean, there's all that we don't really know and really may never know, honestly. Don't you think RFM, they may just like, I don't know, plead this out, seal it, maybe we'll never know exactly what happened.
Oh, I think that their stories are probably pretty similar.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll add is this conversation about men and women, male and female, how that's all different.
Mhm.
On one hand, I've heard numerous face to face. I've heard older teenage boys when I was younger. I've heard grown adult men much more than women. I've hardly ever heard a woman or a female say this, but there's this idea of like, oh, I wish I had a hot teacher when I was young, right? And so you hear that said, and I think that's what creates the discrepancy, is that there are so many more males who sort of speak to wishing that had been the case. I'll just say that whether you're a male or a female, your frontal cortex isn't developed until you're at least 25 years old.
Mhm.
And that having somebody abuse privilege, abuse responsibility, abuse the space that you're in and take advantage of a situation is going to traumatize male and female alike. And it's one thing for people to say that about why that discrepancy comes to be. But as I've watched life unfold, any kid, male or female, who's actually been abused, I know of one person who says something positive about that, and everyone else seems to have been affected in some negative way. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's a really rough story, and you try to figure out, I mean, and I had a thought that someone mentioned in the comment, could this have been some kind of compulsion? It just kind of happened, something snapped, but then these sources I'm talking to are saying that this may have been, this may this may have gone into the past a little, not something just suddenly right now. So I don't know, and I don't know if
Like
that
when
will
the
ever
kid was in
come out.
junior high school?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
not sure, but yeah, we don't really know, but we'll find out and we'll let everybody know if there's more. It's definitely an interesting story, but it taught me several different things over the weekend as far as, getting personal messages saying, how dare you reveal this person as a primary president? And I
Because it's a
thought, well,
secret. It's a
yeah,
big secret.
well, and I thought
Everything in
about
Mormonism is a big secret.
it is. I thought about Wade Christopherson because I instantly found out that he was in 3 bishoprics. That was the first thing I found out. And I put that out everywhere because I'm like, don't you guys see? I mean, I think that really is what it is. And as somebody in the chat said, they think back to all the people they just blindly trusted their children with, because of that
Mhm.
calling, that
Yes.
mantle, that discernment. And maybe that is at the root of what I'm trying to say. You just can't do that anymore. Look at these examples. Go on Floodlit. Just spend 5 minutes on there. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's all I have, RFM, unless you
Very
guys want
good.
to add anything else, and we'll update anybody if there's anything else.
No, thank you so much for that story. I know you know more than you're saying right now, and I'm sure there will be follow-ups in future episodes. Thank you, Rebecca, for the excellent reporting. Bill, what's the next story?
Yeah, we have a tragic thing that happened in a solemn announcement this weekend. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints confirmed the unexpected death of 21-year-old missionary Caleb Gene Martin. Elder Martin, a native of Salem, Utah, was serving in the New Mexico Farmington mission when he died in his sleep on Saturday, January 3rd, 2026, after roughly 20 months of devoted service. Church officials described the cause as a medical issue that has not yet been determined, and they said an autopsy is planned to clarify the circumstances. Elder Martin had begun his full-time mission in May of 2024 and was due to return home later this year. Members of his mission community and church leaders have expressed deep sorrow at his passing, emphasizing his commitment to his faith and his relationship he built among those he served. While details remain limited as the investigation continues, congregations in both New Mexico and Utah are offering prayers and support for his family and fellow missionaries during this difficult time. The death of a young missionary invariably reverberates across Latter-day Saint communities, including those of us who have left. I I think maybe even more so, those of us on this side of things pay close attention when these events happen. And just because some of us don't believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ as the LDS Church as the true church, and its gospel is true, doesn't mean that I don't and others don't consider themselves still Mormon in a way, and that this still hits close to home. Church spokespeople have reiterated their condolences and encouraged members to lean on faith and community for comfort as more information becomes available. Again, this just looks like just a tragic thing that nobody could have planned. Nothing was caused it as far as we know, and whatever he was dealing with, it seems like it caught everybody off guard and wasn't some medical issue that was anticipated. So we'll wait to see when further results come in, but just a tragic loss in the LDS community. So back to you, RFM. Any thoughts that you guys have as well?
No,
I was going to say that.
definitely
Go
to
ahead.
the family.
Yeah. I was going to say that I have seen comments posted on this story in various places where people say the rigorous life of a missionary and horror stories, of missionaries not being allowed to go to the ER or just told to kind of suck it up, or, just things that, like, I don't know, catching a cold that turns into pneumonia that then becomes so serious, that you're eventually in ICU, stories like that. So people were commenting and hoping that it was not something that was overlooked, neglected, keep working, don't worry about it. And then, the worst happened. So we all know stories like that. And I hope this is not the case. I hope it was just something, that nobody could have foreseen.
Yeah, or it could have been the companion. Okay.
That's
so
not
let's see
even
about
a
this.
joke.
I'm sorry, what?
That's not even a joke. We all know people
No.
that were threatened by their companions. Yikes.
There was
Yes,
an apostle once who suggested it as a possibility.
That's right.
that's right. So this is a news story, a couple of news stories from Wyoming, Cody specifically. So it says Cody man, that means a man from Cody, Wyoming, accused of sexually abusing a minor. Yes, the man is a Mormon. That's why we're reporting on it here on the Mormon Newscast. This story from the Powell Tribune. Powell is a town, city that is about 30 minutes from Cody, is my understanding. And here from Floodlit is the synopsis on James Parks, Parks. He was a Mormon church member in Cody, Wyoming. He's accused in 2025, of child sexual abuse. And we're going to get to some more details about this. But here it says James Parks, a.k.a. Jimmy Parks, was a Mormon church member in Cody, Wyoming. Okay. Also at the bottom, Floodlit reviewed multiple allegations posted online that Parks was a bishop in the Mormon church sometime in the 2020s. So far, we have not been able to find out whether he was ever a bishop. So that's just in a rumor status. All right. A Cody man is facing multiple felony charges that allege he sexually abused a teenager over the past year. Now, this individual is not a teacher. He doesn't work in school. I believe he has his own company, or had his own company before it was sold in November of last year. It was PC Cowboys, is I think what it was called, or PC Cowboy. James Jimmy Parks, 49, was arrested last month after the teen reported the alleged abuse to a counselor. Charging documents say prosecutors have charged Parks with 3 felonies that could carry substantial prison time, including counts of first and second degree sexual abuse of a minor. He has been held in the Park County. His last name is Parks. Yes, it's Park County. Being held in the Park County Detention Center since his October 16 arrest, with bond currently set at a combined total of $200,000 cash. This is a picture of the judge on the case. Parks and his attorneys have requested lower bond amounts, but Park County Circuit Court Judge Joey Dara stuck with the recommendations made by prosecutors. At a Friday hearing, Deputy Park County Prosecuting Attorney Marina Tucker said her office, quote, just has very, very serious concerns for the safety of the child and for the community at large. Charging documents say the teen told the Park County Sheriff's Office that Parks showed him pornography and sexually touched him. The child reportedly indicated that the incidents began in 2023 2024 and continued through October of 2025. During a court hearing, Tucker summarized the allegations as being that Park sexually abused the child, quote, over numerous occasions that included masturbating him and performing oral sex on him, period, end of quote. Charging documents also allege that at Park's direction, the teen performed those same sexual acts on Parks. The teen reportedly mentioned some of the allegations in an October 16 conversation with a counselor who contacted law enforcement. That's what mandatory reporting will get you. Parks was arrested hours later after the sheriff's office conducted its own interview with the child. Parks owns an IT business in Cody and has been involved in local politics that included an unsuccessful run to become chair of the Park County Republican Party in March. At his initial court appearance on October 17, 2025, Parks noted his long-running ties to the community as he requested a bond he could post. I'm a business owner here in Park County, and I've been in Park County since 2006. I've never had an issue like this ever, and never been arrested before this, Parks told the court. He also described himself as the sole provider for his family and said his detention would impact his wife and children. While Tucker asked for bail, that's the prosecutor, while Tucker asked for bail to be set at $100,000 on what was then a single felony count, Parks suggested a figure around $10,000. Judge Dare sided with the prosecution, saying a high bond is pretty standard in a case like this. On October 27, Parks and his defense attorney, Sam Crone, that's the picture, sought to have his bond reduced to $25,000 cash or surety. They cited his lack of criminal history and his community ties. Defense attorney Sam Crone also asked for a delay of a preliminary hearing in the case, saying they had information about the alleged victim that they wanted prosecutors to review. But Tucker, and I believe this is a picture of Tucker, I'm not absolutely positive. I want to give a caveat to this because, I do actually do some research on these stories, trying to make sure I get things right. And looking for an image of the prosecutor, this is the image of a prosecutor, a female attorney in Wyoming with the name Marina Tucker, but it shows her as working for a private law firm. I went to the prosecutor's website and looked at their attorneys. They don't have an attorney at all named Marina Tucker, so I'm not exactly sure what the status of it is. I just want to let you know that's what's going on. And yet here in this news story, she is listed as being the prosecutor on the case, and I expect she is. I doubt the reporter here just made the name up out of whole cloth. Tucker countered that the court should instead increase Parks' bond. She said the state gathered additional evidence after his arrest, including seizing his computer and cell phone. That will be its own story here in a minute. The weight of the evidence here is substantial, Tucker argued. There are very compelling disclosures by the alleged victim. In a forensic interview, there is now additionally biological and electronic evidence as well. Court records show Dara, the judge, has issued 6 different search warrants in connection with the case. While those documents have not been made publicly available, the judge said some of them support potentially some additional charges. Dara left bond at $100,000 at the October 27 hearing, then upped the figure to $200,000 on Friday after Tucker filed 2 more felony charges in connection with the allegations. On Monday, Parks waived his right to have a preliminary hearing on the 3 felony charges, which are spread across 2 related cases. That sent them both to Park County District Court, where Parks will be formally arraigned on the charges and has since been. Now, that's where things were as of October and early November. On December 2nd, 2025, this article by Claire McFarland appears in the Cowboy State Daily. Wife of Cody man accused of child sex abuse. Yeah, this guy's wife has been charged on a cover-up claim. And here's what's going on there. I couldn't believe I got this image. I thought this was perfect. A Cody woman accused of wiping her husband's phone clean after he was arrested on suspicion of child sex crimes faces up to 6.5 years in prison and fines if she gets convicted. Amanda Parks is out of jail on a surety bond, charged with 1 count of felony perjury and 3 counts of being an accessory after the fact to other crimes. Her court file says she's scheduled for a preliminary hearing Thursday. That was about a month ago in Cody Circuit Court. Her husband, James Jimmy Parks, is also set for a Thursday preliminary hearing on 2 counts of perjury, based on allegations that he lied to the court about how many vehicles and how much property he owns while applying for a publicly funded defense attorney. So the guy is applying for a public defender, and he says he lies. He doesn't put down the property he owns or the vehicle he owns or vehicles he owns, so he will qualify. Wow. Jimmy Parks has an ongoing sex abuse case in the Park County District Court, his file indicates. By the way, not as uncommon as one might think. But Park County District Court Judge Bill Simpson opted to seal that case. That's the case we're talking about. The Park County District Court Clerk's Office confirmed Tuesday to Cowboy State Daily. As long as the case is sealed, the public cannot access it. Jimmy Parks is in the Park County Detention Center on a bond of $210,000, the jail roster says. Investigators arrested and searched Jimmy Parks the day of the sex crime report. Remember, that's back in October. But didn't find a cell phone on him, Eubanks wrote. The next day, Park County Sheriff's Deputy Jeremiah Ringler, it had to be Ringler because we're talking about a missing cell phone. Deputy Jeremiah Ringler sought and received a search warrant for Jimmy Parks' vehicle and his cell phone. But again, the investigator didn't find a cell phone, wrote Eubanks. Jimmy Parks had been in that vehicle right before his arrest, the detective noted. So where's his cell phone? It's not on him, not in the vehicle he was in right before his arrest. Cody Police Department Detective Sergeant Trapp Haydenberg sought and received a search warrant for Jimmy Parks' IT business in Cody to get his laptop. Eubanks wrote that there as well, a cell phone was not observed. So now they're at his office. I don't see any cell phone. However, when you're there to get the laptop, you're not allowed to go rummaging for other things that aren't in the search warrant, only for those items that are particularly described. So he goes and he gets another warrant to go back and dig around for the cell phone. On October 20th, investigators deployed another search warrant at the business, specifically authorizing them to seize Jimmy Parks' cell phone. The detective wrote, again, they didn't find it. Where did the cell phone go? Eubanks' affidavit weaves together the instances of missing evidence with where Amanda Parks was during the searches. I know that Amanda Parks had been to the PC Cowboys business office after this warrant was executed and received a copy of the warrant and the inventory showing what was seized, the affidavit said. Ringler then sought and received a warrant to search the pair's home. And investigators did so the evening of October 23rd, reportedly. We found the Parks residence to be apparently unoccupied. Ringler called Amanda to try. He called Amanda to try to gain entry without damaging the home. They're there with a search warrant. He's trying to be a nice cop. He told her they were searching for the cell phone and other evidence, says the document, on the phone outside their house. According to Eubanks' account, she said words to the effect of, "You were too late," before providing unprompted indications about where the evidence might have been. Once in the home, Ringler called Jimmy Parks' cell phone number. Remember the one that's missing? To make the phone chime so he could find it, the affidavit says. Amanda answered. What? What do you mean? It's not in the house? You mean the phone is with Amanda? Amanda answered, Eubanks wrote, adding that she told Ringler she'd just picked up his phone from the office. Within minutes, Amanda Parks handed the phone over to a sheriff's deputy, the affidavit said, who probably responded to that location very quickly. Eubanks sought and received a warrant to search the phone since he believed evidence of Parks' alleged sex crimes was within it. It had been factory reset or wiped minutes before Ringler called it and spoke to Amanda on it. Eubanks wrote. By the way, I always think of you, Bill, as being the master guy who knows all this lingo. Do you know what? And can you explain what it means to be factory reset on a cell phone?
Well, sure. Well, first off, let me just say that her saying you're too late. Again, I'm not suggesting that someone commit a crime. I am suggesting that after she had committed the crime, there were 100 better ways to handle her situation than she did. Bury that thing in a hole.
Don't talk to the cops.
Don't talk to
How
the
many
cops.
times do I have to tell you? Did she not watch the show?
Yeah. But to factory reset a phone, again, I think most people know this. You go into the settings, you're essentially telling the phone that you're going to now sell it or you're going to pass it off to someone else. When I worked at the pawn shop, we had to be sure that we had them factory reset it right in front of us, because if they said they factory reset it and they actually didn't, once they walked out, if I couldn't get a hold of them again, that phone was just a brick. It was just a paperweight, and I wouldn't have the information to be able to factory reset it. So it always had to happen in front of us. But once
when you do that, does it get rid of all the information that's on the phone?
It gets rid of all the information on the phone, sort of. You can definitely, with certain kinds of equipment, often still get back in and get all of the old information if you have certain technology to do that. But generally speaking, for the average Joe, the phone is now wiped clean and is now ready to be used by a completely different person.
Do you want to say anything about this story so far, Rebecca?
Nope. I'm always interested in stories from Cody, though. And of course, I did my own digging into this, which we'll talk about later.
I know it's a good thing they got that temple, because I think it's really affecting the righteousness of the saints.
Exactly.
It had been factory reset or wiped minutes before Ringler called it and spoke to Amanda on it, Eubanks wrote. She also had put a new passcode on the phone, so it would appear it was in a running state, which I think means unwiped, and told investigators the passcode was an apparent act of goodwill, the detective added. So does this mean that she puts a passcode on the phone, gives it to the cops, and then tells the cops what the passcode is so they can get inside the phone and find out that it's been reset and wiped?
Right. So it's been factory reset. She then goes in as if she's the new person owning the phone and now sets it up. And it only gets to go through 4 or 5 steps. It's really easy. It takes maybe 3 minutes. And now that phone is essentially brand new to that person. And all she had to do is put a new passcode on. So she's like, hey, I'm helping you. I'm letting you in. But as far as she was concerned, you're not going to find anything because I've already factory reset it.
It's like, here's the combination to Al Capone's vault.
Yeah. After you emptied it.
Yes. Yeah. Eubanks says the likely reason for her cooperating is that she knew the device was of no evidentiary value because she'd wiped it clean. Hayden Burke and Eubanks, two of the investigators, interviewed an employee of the IT company that's PC Cowboys on Halloween. The man said he knew Jimmy Parks had left his cell phone on his desk. Okay, so this employee at the company said he knew that Jimmy Parks had left his cell phone on his desk when he left his office October 16th. Not sure how he knows that, but he says he did. That's where he left it. So he either intentionally or unintentionally left it behind when he went to this other place. At that time, which may have well been done intentionally, of course. At that time, Jimmy Parks told the employee to remove a solid-state drive. At that time, Jimmy Parks told the employee to remove a solid-state drive from the computer in the office, apparently, but didn't tell the employee why that was necessary, the document says. The employee indicated the business's surveillance video may have been stored on that drive. In a jail call the evening of October 21st, Jimmy and Amanda were conspiring to destroy the memory drive, Eubanks wrote. He related a quote by Jimmy, which would have been in this phone call between him and his wife, saying that thing can just get, like, I know a certain person likes to break things into tiny little pieces. And Amanda says in the phone call, yup. Message received, loud and clear. We're totally fooling the cops on this one. Do you understand what's going on there? Okay. I'm just understanding it right now that it's a call that's being monitored between these two, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's a
So,
code to say, you know, how people in the family like to break things. Wouldn't it be
yes,
great if something got broken?
yes.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And of course, couples have their own little language, right? You're supposed to be able to hit somebody under the table and they know what to do instead of saying, why are you hitting me? Right. And
Hopefully,
this is one of those, yeah, where she's like, got it.
if days were hours.
Yes.
Jimmy Parks also asked if Amanda Parks had been to see the employee, the affidavit says. Remember the one there who was asked to break apart that hard drive? As of his November 21st signing of the interview, Eubanks had been unable to schedule an interview with Amanda. Investigators don't know where the memory drive is, the detective added. So I think that has gone the way of all memory drives. Amanda's perjury count is punishable by up to 5 years in prison and $5,000 in fines. That's a Class C felony. Each of her 3 accessory counts punishable by up to 6 months in jail and $750 in fines. So it sounds like a misdemeanor of some sort. Jimmy Park's 2 perjury counts are each punishable. Those are 5 years and 5,000 fines. He faces 3 felony charges in a sex case as well. However, and I'm sure those are going to be much more serious than these others. The jail log denotes those charges more specifically against Jimmy Parks as 1 count of child abuse for mentally injuring a child, which is punishable by up to 10 years in prison, so Class B felony. 1 count of first-degree sexual abuse of a minor, punishable up to 50 years in prison, probably Class A. And 1 count of second-degree sexual abuse of a minor, which is punishable by up to 20 years in prison. Well, they've got all sorts of different maximums, but you can see that he is in a lot of trouble. According to sources, and I'll let Rebecca talk more about these sources if she wishes, James and Amanda Parks are members of the Cody 4th Ward in Cody, Wyoming. James Carroll Parks, his middle name is Carroll. He has been the history specialist since February of 2020, and his wife, Amanda Dawn Parks, has been the music coordinator since November 5th, 2023. Did you want to say anything about those? Because I got this information from you.
You did get it from me because I always, whenever I see a story that involves somebody I believe is LDS, I just try to find out, you know, who are they and what do they do in the ward? And of course, in Cody, I was interested because, you know, there was quite a fight for the Cody Temple that we've been covering here and a lot of different places for the last 2 years. The townspeople were townspeople. It makes it sound like pitchforks, right? And Frankenstein. But, you know, there was the Preserve Our Cody Neighborhood Residents group made up of residents, you know, who were trying to say, again, not so tall, not so bright. And there were people there in the stakes and the wards that were, you know, pretty aggressive in trying to promote the temple, you know, speaking at town meetings, writing letters to the city planner. If you remember our coverage of him, kind of working behind the scenes to get things done without anyone knowing. So I was able to determine that both of the parks had signed the petition. Yes, we need a temple here. It's really important, right? There was a petition that they all signed and presented. And not only that, but Amanda Parks went as far as to write sort of a lengthy email to the city planner. Again, it was kind of a request if you want to write in how you feel. And, you know, I gave this letter to RFM, but it's basically about, you know, we need a temple here. We're God-fearing people and we need a temple to practice our ordinances and bring our families together. And, you know, I don't know what the time frame is as far as
June
what was
1st,
happening.
It's June
Yeah,
1st, 2023 is the date of the letter.
Right. And so I don't know I don't know what was going on in her family at that time. You know, there's nothing that the husband is accused of right now. I do know that someone there told me they had a lot of foster kids that they eventually got sealed to them in like 21, 22, I think. So I think they have sort of a large family, you know, made up of kids of their own and foster kids. And so she talks in this letter, you know, about having kids and going to the temple. And I just thought it was an interesting juxtaposition, you know, this person who was able to very quickly grab a phone, you know, delete evidence. You know, she's somebody that also 2 years earlier felt very strongly about the family values and everything that the temple would bring to the area. So I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yes. So this is from Amanda Parks. titled Cody LDS Temple, Please Let It Be Built. We're not reading the whole thing.
No.
It says, I am writing in support of the LDS Temple being built in Cody in the proposed location. Second paragraph, if people choose to feel offended by out practicing our religion, that is not something we can fix no matter what we do. Small irony. Here's the second part, and here's finally the third part, signed by Amanda Parks. She makes an unfortunate comparison of the height of the temple with the height of cell phone towers. But we won't dwell on that. She probably regrets having made that comparison by now. And finally, and we're not doing this whole story, okay? This is it. I can only do so much. But because it's from Powell, it's another Mormon who's charged with child molestation in the neighborhood of Cody. It's like, what's going on in Cody, guys?
Can I just say, last week I predicted in 2026 there would be more child abuse. And in week 1, the first newscast of 2026, we already have 3 cases. I'm going to keep a running count. I will keep a document. 3 cases so far, 1 week into 2026.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Former House candidate from Powell, Wyoming, accused of child abuse and molestation. And here's the guy, David Kellett, Kellett, who has been charged from Powell, Wyoming. Once again, my understanding is about 30 minutes away from Cody. And that's it. We'll talk more about this some other time, but I'm sure you can only take so much of this stuff.
Yeah, that's what's wrong with you counting, Bill, is that there are other stories. We just can't cover everything. But I will say about Kellett, he also, as I understand, was a strong supporter of the LDS Temple, very vocal. And he did sign that petition. And people I've talked to said, oh yeah, he was adamant that temple that reflects his family values has to be there. So.
And it will be.
It is there. It's almost done. So, yeah.
So there's that story. If you're both done making comments, if you have anything to say, go ahead. But I wanted to throw it over to you, Rebecca, for this report about evil influencer.
Evil influencer. Yeah, I've been talking about how this was going to come out. It came out on the 30th of December. It's a documentary, another one about this one focusing on Jody more than Ruby, kind of from her perspective, which is why it's called the Jody Hildebrandt story. And, we've covered this for the last couple years, and we've read everything about it, but it had been a while since I had revisited it. There have been other documentaries, and I have to say I was yelling at the TV. It was one of those where you're just like infuriated. It's a new angle kind of to look at it from Jody's point of view. I love to see Natasha on there. That's a picture of my TV, and Natasha is on there trying to help people understand kind of the Mormon background, because some of the behaviors of Ruby Frankie, it's very hard to understand if you were not raised LDS, or even Jody, how she was able to manipulate everybody. But yeah, it revisited the story. I would recommend it to everybody, but it is horrible. It's very difficult to watch, just like all of them were. But for some reason, this one really, really got to me. But it did make me realize that there are some loose ends to the story having to do with the LDS Church's involvement. And we'd reported on this off and on, but now, it's kind of in the past. Everybody's serving their prison term, and, what's left over? What are these loose ends? This is what I was kind of trying to dissect as far as what I was upset about and why I was yelling at the TV. So I thought this person kind of hit it on the head. This is somebody that just was on like a Netflix Reddit talking about evil influencer. This person is not LDS, but she was watching it kind of through an outsider's eye and had some really great observations. And so this post said, disturbing on so many levels. First of all, people in this extreme manipulative religion are already in a weakened state and don't trust themselves and are always looking for others for the answer. I thought, in a weakened state. That explains it so well, I thought. You are told to override your gut. You never trust your gut. You're always looking for something outside to give you a sign, and you can fall prey so easily to somebody as manipulative as a Jody Hildebrand. It's just so hard for everybody to understand how this happened to this family, especially the husband. How did he not know? How did he not take steps? So she kind of goes on. You can freeze on this if you want to read it. But another part I thought was good. She said, I believe it's because they are all raised from the start in the LDS Church to feel like sinners, to feel ashamed of natural human urges, and to look at other people to tell them that they are okay. So I just thought everybody on the outside can see this. They can see exactly what the dynamic is. And what Jody really played on was the idea that you're a sinner, that you're broken, that there's the devil inside you, which is why I have this picture of the devil here, that little children can have the devil inside of you. And I think you know where I'm going with this, RFM, because you and I talked about this about every time conference comes along. When will the church ever address this extremely harmful doctrine and idea, right? And in this case, Jody herself claimed to be possessed. There are videos of her talking in tongues, calling her bishop over. I think other leadership came over asking for blessings. They saw her in this condition and nobody raised a flag. Like, this woman is a therapist and she's talking to people, and she herself is rolling on the floor, possessed by the devil, asking for a priesthood blessing. So again, a loose end is that the church needs to be very clear that your child, just because maybe they do something wrong, or maybe they don't read their scriptures every day, or maybe they don't pay their tithing, they're not possessed by the devil. Do I even need to mention Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell? I don't know, RFM, what do you think? I just thought this was a huge loose end that may need to be revisited. They really need to address this issue because it's so clear looking from, hindsight that this is a major factor in what happened in this story, because they were trying to, get the devil out of the children, right? By torture.
Yeah. Well, it is certain, as certain as anything can be, which is not readily demonstrable, that there are other children in similar situations in other radicalized, if I can use that term, Mormon families, along the lines of visions of glory and whatever the hell it is that these people are doing, where they think their kids are possessed and they treat them horribly and abuse them physically. And sometimes they die and sometimes they would have, except they were brave enough to escape for the umpteenth time and make it to the neighbors in shoeless feet, only socks, in the middle of a summer in St. George.
Oh, that is so hard to watch. Like I seriously, and everybody does, tear up every time you see that brave little boy going to the neighbor. It's just, it's heartbreaking.
Yes, this is happening in Mormon families for specifically Mormon reasons, based upon specifically Mormon doctrines or aberrations of specifically Mormon doctrines, whatever you want to call it. This is a Mormon problem, and the Mormon leaders need to address it. And they need to say it in general conference and not in passing and not in something cryptic that you have to know what they're talking about before maybe you think that's what they're saying. No, address it in no uncertain terms and spend a whole talk doing it. And maybe not just one, but I'm asking just for one whole talk, okay?
Yeah.
Not just part of a talk. This is important. These are kids' lives on the line and their welfare, and you know it. So address it. Do something right for a change.
Yep, that was my thought. That was one of the things I was yelling at the TV. And I was also yelling, forget the polygamy deniers. Go after the people that are promoting this kind of stuff, the visions of glory. They just have the priorities all wrong.
Oh, good point. Yeah, we'll shut down Michelle Stone.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But not these people. What have they done to these people? Do we know? Have they done anything?
No, they don't address it. They don't say anything. Because it's kind of at the root of Mormonism. We believe in demons, possessions, speaking in tongues. We believe all this, right? It's there. It's part of it. Keeps us in line. But when you project that onto children, we've seen the harm. And like you said, those are the only cases we know of. You can't even imagine probably what's happening behind the scenes. So any thought on that angle, Bill? And then I have one more from the
It is in the temple endowment.
It is in the temple endowment. Exactly. It's very familiar, the idea, and it can be taken to extreme.
Yeah, it goes to what you both are saying, and you used a great word there, RFM, aberration. it's easy for believers to go, well, that's not us. That's not the LDS Church. That's the fundamentalists. That's the Tim Ballards. That's the Jody Hildebrandts. That's the Lori and Chad Daybells. They are building upon LDS theology, and it has the echoes of it. And when you get to what Mormonism is teaching, it is teaching things that are unhealthy, that are designed to manipulate or shame people into doing what you're told to do. And so long as that exists, there will always be other folks. It's bad enough in the church. And then there will always be other folks who, as you point out, will create theologies that are aberrations of Mormonism in the LDS Church. And that'll be used to continue to do harm as well. And so until Mormonism fixes the original problem, there will always be these entities that are one-offs doing the same sort of thing, but worse.
Were there any other loose ends that you were talking about, Rebecca?
There is one more loose end, which ties, no pun intended, right into this. But you're right. And that's how they describe Jody being able to manipulate everybody, is you prey on what's already there in your psyche from the LDS Church. So if we go back to the slides, this is a huge one. And I don't know how this has slipped through the cracks. And I just want to remind everybody again, for whatever it is worth, part of what happened is Ruby kept a journal. And this is why they were able to corroborate everything the kids said. She literally documented the child torture because it was for their own good. You know, she would say the child won't do this, therefore we made them do that. You know, she was keeping these very detailed journals. But as we found out, and you will all remember how we reported on this, but I just don't think it gets enough attention because it was never really addressed. So it says on 5/28/23. Right now, keep in mind, all this came to light the very last days of August, right? But back in May, Ruby writes, meeting with Jeremy Jaggi. Okay, now that is a higher up church official. It also says came down to, you know, and I don't know if that means meet with Jeremy Jaggi, talking about Jody coming down. I'm not sure if that fits into that line or the other one, but
I
the
think it
bottom
is.
line.
I think it's the one before. Came down to Jody's to help spring clean.
Yeah, I think that's it too. So, but the bottom line is somehow, Jody Hildebrandt, can you get a meeting with the general authority, RFM? You probably could. Bill, maybe you could. I couldn't. Somehow she's getting a meeting with the general authority. So 2 weeks later,
And a
in the
blessing
journal,
from a temple president the week before.
and a blessing from a temple president the week before, because she thought she was possessed. She was always trying to get these blessings. Again, red flag, anyone that you're letting her anywhere around members with this going on. So 2 weeks after she met with Jaggi, whatever it was that she said to him, there's another meeting 2 weeks later. And this time, in my mind, Jaggi says, we got to get Brad Wilcox in on this meeting, because she has the first meeting with Jaggi. And then the second meeting is Jaggi and, I don't know if I'm saying that right, and Brad Wilcox.
It might be Yagi, but he's a 70.
I think so, yes. Jody goes to Salt Lake City to meet with Jeremy Jaggi and Brad Wilcox, okay? So we're just not talking about that enough. I'm sorry. So I wanted to find out, who are these men? What do they have in common? Can we possibly guess what they were going to get involved in bed with the devil with Jody over? What did we dodge as a bullet as far as what could have happened from this meeting had she not been arrested? So Jeremy Jaggi, in June of 2023, he is the assistant executive director in the missionary department. Has anybody talked about that before? That he's the assistant director, executive director over missionaries, right? All missionaries worldwide. So why is Jody Hildebrandt going to talk to somebody who's in charge of missionaries? That's kind of interesting. And whatever she said to him, why did he then go, you know what, we also got to get Brad in here to talk to Jody? Well, what's Brad in charge of? You know this, don't you, RFM, without looking?
Yeah, the young men.
He's in charge. Yeah, exactly. He's the first counselor in the Young Men's General Presidency. So we got Jody, and she wants to talk to somebody who's in charge of missionaries and in charge of young men, right? So that's a very specific age group right there. So does she in her practice have anything to do with kids that age, anything that she thinks she might be able to add or create a program or lend something. Well, I found this BYU Women's Conference, right? She spoke there in 2017, and it looks like she's connected. If you look over there, she spoke with Jeremy Levitt, who is somebody involved with Sons of Helaman. Do you guys know what that is?
Not really.
Yeah, it's a program for young men to stop them from all kinds of behaviors like masturbation, pornography, kind of help them. Parents will sign the kids up for that if they think they're having problems. So the talk that they give was called "The Savior is Our Strength, Hope, and Healing Power When Dealing with Addiction," and addiction meaning pornography, addiction meaning masturbation. So I am just floating this theory, okay? Right around this time, it used to be that when you put your mission papers in, you had to put them in 3 months before you were eligible. So 3 months before you're 19, when they changed it, 3 months before you're 18. Right about that time, they were about to make a switch 5 months before. 5 months before. And we've talked about this before. That means your senior year. See that picture there? Everybody else is graduating. You're not. You're a missionary. I mean, you're graduating, but did you really pay attention? So I kind of think, could Jody have been floating some kind of program pre-mission in the young men's groups that would help prepare young men to go on missions? Was it one of her shame-based, kinds of things? I just think it might have been something like that, given who she was talking to and given the time frame. We'll never know. But I think that we should be able to know why these higher ups in the church that nobody else can get a meeting with were talking with her. So that's my little conspiracy theory. But I just wanted to put it out there again that that's a loose end, that we never have found out for sure why she was meeting with someone high up in the missionary department and high up in young men. So anyway, there she is again. We
Can I
deserve
bring up one other
answers.
thing, Rebecca,
Yeah.
that I find chilling? Is here in this same journal, after the entry on June 13th, 23 of meeting with Brad Wilcox and Jeremy Yagi, Jaggi, comes June 30th, 23, where she says R,
Mm-hmm.
okay, one of the children, R
Yeah.
refuses to do well.
Mm-hmm.
And then what is it? Sits?
They make him sit outside, I think, in the
Yes.
heat. Yeah.
Sits.
Do
He
you
says he is done. I'm so sorry. Yes. And then on July 1st, the last one on this page, but the next entry, R is to stay outside, sleep outside.
Yeah. Yeah. No, in fact, do you remember, maybe you don't remember, Arvan, one of our very first newscasts, you read through this journal.
Yes.
It was so difficult to sit there and listen to that and try to, have a professional demeanor. I mean, it's just devastating to think of these kids. So there's so
I
much
do
more.
remember. It's just very strange to see her meetings recorded with these general authorities immediately next to her
Followed
recording
by.
of her child abuse.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. There are no boundaries there. So anyway, everybody watch that documentary if you can. Get prepared to yell at the TV and have it all come back up again. But I think there are unanswered questions and the church can do better. They can learn a lesson from Jody and Ruby. They could do some things differently. So anyway.
So this is something you brought up. This isn't something that's addressed in this documentary.
Oh, no, not at all. No, I'm just saying that as somebody watching it from an LDS perspective and having reported on it for years, I realize that those things are still dangling chads. They have not stopped talking about Satan's influence on children, and they've never really explained why she's so heavily influenced a lot of the addiction programs in the LDS Church that still exist today.
Excuse me. It just occurs to me that Brad Wilcox was released. And he was not retained.
He was not retained. So was Jaggi released too and moved somewhere else very soon after.
It was effective August 1st, which means it was announced in April of 2025.
Yep.
That's when he was released, when Brad Wilcox was released.
Yep.
And where he is, I don't know now.
Where Brad is?
Yes.
Oh, I know where Brad is.
Where's Brad?
He's leading tours. Get on my bus, kids, and we'll go to Nauvoo, and you'll see all the sites that'll strengthen your testimony.
Sounds like he's not working so much for the church anymore. Okay.
I don't know.
Well,
That's
great.
the last thing I saw was like an ad that he was leading a tour.
What could go wrong with that?
Okay, go.
I wish
I
him
just
a
went on
lot
a
of luck,
church history tour. Yeah, it can be grueling.
especially when he does one of his great drum solos.
Oh dear.
Is this your story, Bill?
Yeah, this is a story about, again, the church saying the quiet thing out loud. So for decades, the LDS Church has used language classes taught by missionaries as a soft entry strategy into new communities. English classes, job training, humanitarian adjacent programs have routinely functioned as relationship builders first and missionary pipelines second. Anyone familiar with missionary work understands this wasn't accidental. Language instruction lowered defenses, built trust, and created sustained contact. All great things when you want to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. All while maintaining plausible deniability, because the church never said directly that we send missionaries to teach English so that we can eventually get baptisms. Well, that was until today. All the while maintaining plausible deniability about the church's true objective. Official messaging has long emphasized service and education, while proselytizing remained implied rather than stated outright. But what makes this moment notable is that the church is no longer implying, it's explicitly acknowledging the strategy, or at least one of its missionaries did. So you see on the right-hand side, English Connect. This is the program where the missionaries teach English to folks. This is an English learning program offered by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as a way to initiate meaningful conversations with individuals in the community. Right there is already a hat tip. RFM, I can't hear you.
Meaningful conversations.
Yeah, like the first discussion. Right. So they're already hinting strongly at what they're doing. But if that wasn't strong enough, down below the picture, this is Elder, or I'm going to get his name wrong, but Aref Segovia and his companion, Elder Ukabu. They visit a church member in the Conakry second branch on November 16th, 2025. I chopped all of that up to death, so don't quote me on that. But here's what the bottom one says. Although his lessons would be focused on teaching English, Elder Segovia's ultimate goal was to share the gospel with the people of Conakry, Guinea. Driven by that purpose, he got to work. Yeah. So in this account, he openly frames English Connect not merely as a service, but as a means to an end to share the gospel with the people of Conakry, Guinea. This is the quiet part being said out loud. The language classes are not an end in themselves, but a deliberate missionary tool, a foot in the door by design. While this may not surprise former missionaries or longtime observers, it represents a shift in institutional candor, at least on this issue. And I think this is something we're seeing the church do more and more. Little by little, it is trying to get away from, at least in part, a lot of the secrecy, and it is trying little by little to come a little more clean. And I applaud it for doing so. I just wish the whole time it would have acknowledged that teaching English was always a hop, skip, and a jump tool to getting to teaching the discussions.
Can I ask you this, Bill?
Yes.
On the right.
Yeah.
Where's that from, the article?
Rebecca, help me out here. Do you know where this originally showed up at? Because all I had was this little snippet.
That is probably about, if you're on your phone, like 3 screenshots down, probably.
What I mean is,
what medium is this? Is this the church's newsroom? What is?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's why I was so shocked by it, because we all know the English ruse, right? But I've never seen it just blatantly said right out loud like that. And it was on the church's. Yeah, exactly.
Neither have I. I think this is a huge glitch and oversight. And I think this is a case of the left not knowing what the right hand is saying.
And I'll just say, when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, this missionary spoke out of turn. But no, this is a third person voice.
Yep.
This is the church speaking on his behalf in that bottom paragraph. Although his lessons would be focused on teaching English, the ultimate goal of this elder was to share the gospel with the people.
Here it is. I don't know if you can see it, but there is the church
newsroom.
Yeah, right there.
Well,
Which is
thank you
which is
so
why I
much.
was so shocked because I see that in the chat. People are like, everybody knows that's what it's about. We all knew that was what it was about, but here they're actually just saying, "Oh yeah." What's funny about the article is they say actually what the people need to learn is Spanish. That's what they're learning in their schools. So he quickly pivoted and started teaching Spanish, which I
Mhm.
thought was very strange.
Pretty soon he'll be teaching how to play baseball.
Oh dear.
Yeah, a lot of baptisms came that way. So who's on first? All right. While this may not surprise former missionaries or longtime observers, it represents a shift in institutional candor. The church is now publicly owning a tactic it previously wrapped in softer, more ambiguous language. And that omission alone makes it a meaningful change in how openly it describes its missionary methods. And it reminds me, again, it's very different, but it's this other moment where Elder Ballard is trying to figure out who started asking in the first discussion to commit people to baptism when
Yeah.
it was the church that asked. In the discussions that Elder Ballard early in his career in church leadership was on the committee to form the actual Preach My Gospel in the earlier manual. That was the 6 discussions that I got taught. And even earlier before that, it's been done by the church the whole time.
I think this is an example of the church being honest, the same way it was the church being honest in 2020 when they inadvertently put that quote from Joseph Fielding Smith in the new Book of Mormon Come Follow Me manual on 2nd Nephi chapter 5, talking about the black skin being a curse from God. That was also them being honest.
Yeah, sometimes if honesty only comes accidentally and that's the only honesty you get, you still ought to express gratitude for it.
Well, a grateful heart, a thankful heart is a happy heart.
Nice. All right. Well, that's all I've got on this story. So back to you.
Thank you so much. Did you have anything you wanted to say about this story, Rebecca?
I was just thinking that this practice has been going on forever. I remember putting various guys into the MTC, right, when I was in BYU, and a lot of them going like to Mexico or South America. They could only go as a teacher, right? They had to have a teaching visa. They weren't missionaries, they were teachers. I mean, and that was what, 40 years ago? Was it? Yeah, over 40. Well, yeah, I guess so. Gosh. And I think about it's dangerous, honestly. I remember I had a family member called to Moscow, and before this family member left, do you remember those missionaries that got arrested and put in jail? This would have been in
Yes.
like 21 because they were offering English classes, but people burst into their apartment, guards, and found other materials. And that's why they were arrested. So, but the whole thing was come, we'll study
Saratov.
English. No, not Saratov. That happened
No?
too. This was, yeah, no, that was something completely different. This
Okay.
was in like the early, like 2020, I want to say right before COVID. Yeah, it must have been. But anyway, these things happen where it's kind of dangerous because you're doing a bait and switch. And are you trying to skirt the laws of the land? That's kind of a problem and it can get kids in trouble, I think.
Well, in Japan, we weren't trying to skirt the laws of the land. We were just trying to fool the kids into coming in and listening to what we had to say, which would hopefully turn into getting baptized.
Right.
But it is a great, so I did this as well. It was kind of common to teach Japanese, hopefully do something that you'll get people to come to because they're interested in it. You're not going to get people to come to, hey, we're going to teach the first discussion at the local, classroom. So that's kind of what we did. And they're still doing it. They're just talking about it. But this is a good example of how it seems that, okay, I'll say it. I'll deal in an absolute here, and you can prove me wrong. With Mormons, there's always an ulterior motive to anything they do for you. And that ulterior motive always has to do with getting baptized into the church. And I wonder how much the church is involved in this because now it's talking about an English Connect program offered by the LDS Church.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. No, they create programs which actually do benefit people lots of times. Look at Mr. Beast and Just Serve, right? But then there, like you said, there's always this other side of it where the main focus, is bringing souls to Christ and joining the church.
Because it's
But
the most
English,
important thing.
exactly. But I'm sure English Connect it's like pathways, right? You can get education, sort of, you can do that. But the main purpose is that as you're taking and going through the Pathways program, you have to take an institute class every semester. So you're also getting a heavy dose of
Yes.
LDS indoctrination. So it's all part of it. And I think some people are like, all right, I'll put up with that so that I can do that. It's like me. I just went on to Branson over Christmas. Remember, I zoomed in with you guys from that.
I do.
Didn't realize that the whole package that I'd purchased included a little stipulation that I attend a Wyndham Resort pitch for 2 hours to try to sell me $100,000, vacation point package.
Yes.
So it was really fun. I had a great time.
I'll bet you
attending
did.
the pitch. Huh?
I'll bet you did. Knowing you, you probably sold the present or something.
I was so sweet. I killed them with kindness, but it's like, oh, we're not doing that. Yeah, thank you. But yes, I'll take your gift card, and it was really educational. I put all my skills to use. Yeah. Anyway,
I'm glad you didn't miss
tangent.
that.
Yes, a tangent. Sorry.
So here's another story.
Oh, yes. Yes. I think this is why I said, let me get back to my slides here. Are
This is
they
like President Nelson
Uh-huh.
and Elder Holland
yeah. So this
in
is
earlier days
in earlier days,
Jerusalem.
in different days, or are they? Because this was posted on faithful social media. I want to say that I get 99.9% of my content from the faithful side of things. This is the Liahona of this month, January 2026. And I put a call out to see if anybody else could help me confirm this and actually had a copy of the Liahona. If anybody does, please run to it now and open it to, but I think must be the back page. Because for some reason, can you read who it says the prophet is there?
No, but hang on a second here. The first presidency, Russell M. Nelson.
Yes.
And it says the quorum of the 12 apostles, Jeffrey R. Holland.
They're still listed there in the Liahona. If you weren't paying attention and simply getting your information from the Liahona,
Oh my gosh.
you might think
There's
they
no
were
way they
still
printed
living.
this before it was delivered.
Well, and people, of course, in the faithful chat were like, oh, they have these printed out 6 months in advance. I was like, do they though?
But then it's 6 months. I mean, Russell Nelson
strange.
has been gone for a bit, hasn't he?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So, since this was just a picture from faithful social media, I wanted to find somebody that actually had the Liahona, but a lot of people in my crowd do not. So it's too bad my parents still aren't living because they always supplied me with every church magazine all the time, whether I wanted it or not. So
the January edition of the Liahona, the church magazine, says the first presidency consists of Russell M. Nelson, Dallin H. Oaks, and Henry B. Eyring, and the quorum of the 12 apostles is headed by Jeffrey Holland.
Yeah,
well, I think that's another case of the church being honest with us.
It's very possible. But again, according to this photo from faithful social media, I really, really did want to find an actual copy. And I was contacted by, some faithful people that are always on my social media sites, and they said, well, what do you need? What page? And I said, well, I'm not going to tell you, because I'm going to use this later. They're like, dang it. Now you're going to make me look through every single page to see what would annoy Rebecca. Right. So
Is it Steve Pinecker?
Is it Steve Pinecker?
Yeah.
No,
that you're talking to?
I don't think he gets the Liahona. No, I'm talking faithful LDS, but I didn't want to tip my hand. So if anybody does come across a copy and can tell me if this is real, but it was on faithful social media. Anyway, I bring this up because, according to this, there is no vacancy, right? But we think we know that there is a vacancy, meaning a new apostle will be called pretty soon. Somebody pointed out in the chat earlier that I haven't seen a notification that Elder Uchtdorf is now the acting president. Have either of you? Usually they make some kind of an announcement about a change like that or a new role, but I haven't seen that either. So we'll have to see. Anyway, so this I also found on faithful social media, and I think it's very interesting. Somebody went through and gathered up the trends in choosing new apostles from the past, like the last 10 years. Who was chosen? What was their role in the church? How old were they, right? So they're going to look at the past and then they're going to project into the future. So if you look at this faithful person put it together. Christofferson was 63. He'd been a law professor. He was president of the 70. Anderson, 57. The 70 business. Rasband, 64 business. Stevenson, 60 business. Renlund, 62 medical. I mean, are you guys sort of seeing a trend here? When you see it mapped out like this, of everybody they called in the last 10 years, Gong, 64, diplomacy, Soros, 59, Kieran 62, Kase 62. They're all kind of the same age range, aren't they? And they're all in professional careers, most of them business, one lawyer, and they've all had something to do with the presiding bishopric or the 70. So had you guys ever noticed that before, that they're all kind of the same kind of person?
Well, the same kind of person, yes, but I hadn't seen before me how
Yeah.
close in age they were.
Yeah, and it's funny because my co-host Landon made the point. He goes, God is not choosing the prophet. If you were to call a 40-year-old apostle today, he would guaranteed be the prophet for like 40 years, 20 years from now. So it is kind of interesting. So now if you kind of look at the other side, based on this trend, calling people that are in their early-ish 60s, certain professions, people that have held responsibilities in the 70s, this is the list here. So you have one person I didn't know. Have you heard of Elder Ringwood? Are you aware of him at all?
No.
Yeah, I didn't know either, but he is the son-in-law of President Nelson. A lot of times people who are called, you think, oh, God chose someone from way out of the, nepotism. No, it's usually connected through the wives if you actually take a look. So there could be a nepotism kind of a choice with Elder Ringwood. Or what about Matt Holland? Can you imagine? President Holland 2.0. I don't know if they dare do that. But again, he fits right in there. He's been in the 70s. He's 59 years old. He's professionally in education. You can just kind of go through this list.
And wouldn't it be poetic? Wouldn't everybody love that?
It'd be like bookends. Seriously, they may do it. But I feel they have to make a gesture to where pretty much the only place the church is booming, and that is Africa. And that's why that's my short list right there. Possibly. And also Gajoy's from Brazil. But they went European for the last two, right? They gave a shout out to Europe, even though the church isn't really growing there. I feel like they need to do something different. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Have you even given it any thought?
None. How about you, Beth?
None? What's wrong with you? Don't you stay up at night?
I'll say this. First off, I won't believe they will ever call a person of color, and by that I mean black skin, until I see it. And until I see it, I'm just going to always assume that the next one is not going to be a black person, because I still have a hunch that while they've gotten rid of the curse at the general level, I still think they have some rule among the top 15. And I would just say, I dare you to prove me wrong. Call them.
But think about this. I think that too. I think they may realize they have to optically. I think they would never want him to be the prophet, which is why they would choose someone of a certain age that would never make it to be the prophet. But they could be in the Q15.
Maybe, but I won't believe it until I see it.
Yeah,
that person, just by the nature of their skin, changes the conversations that are had in that group. Just like if you added a woman into that group.
Oh yeah. It's so glaring. Every time they don't, it's so glaring.
The other thing I saw was that on that list where you showed the most recent apostles, I'm going to go back here just for a second. All of the new folks, very few lawyers in that group. The lawyers are now just in the first presidency. If I'm just about, there may be somebody else I'm not thinking of.
We're at the very top.
Yes. My point is you need some young lawyers to be in the group moving forward. So I don't think it's going to be a black person for the reasons I laid out. My hunch is it will be someone who is a lawyer, and maybe the two you've got named there, but
Nash or Duncan. Right. They're right about the right age. You're right.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Rebecca? You say your short list is Godoy or Dubé?
Yeah, just because I feel like they went European the last two, and I just feel like it just screams. There is an elephant in the room every time they do not call somebody where the only place the church is booming. The language predominantly spoken in the LDS Church is French now. Do you realize that? Africa is where it is. And optically, it's just horrific. So I'm saying they're going to call a, middling age person that will never reach being the prophet, but has been there for 30 years. This gentleman, he works for CES. He's worked for the church for decades. He's sort of like a trusted source. And if they were going to do it, I think he would be the pick. But again, for the reasons that Bill outlined, it may never happen. But it sure looks terrible time after time. And I'll even go on a limb and predict, I really think that it's very possible that 2 other people may pass away, in a short period of time, honestly. And there may be other vacancies. How long can they go without addressing most of our members are over here? We need to
You're talking
have
about
some
Elder
representation.
Oaks and Eyring. You expect them to drop
Yes.
like flies in the near future.
Well, I didn't say it that way. Now, did I? I said that reports, we always think that, but if you think about it, President Nelson was very robust, even through his, 90s. Nobody really thought he would probably pass away until he hit maybe like 100. But President Oaks is very frail. President Eyring, I'm not going to bring him up again because of what happened last time.
What happened?
Nothing.
He cried.
Stop it. Oh gosh. Anyway, I don't know. We'll see. But I was trying to think of the time frame. How quickly do they usually call the next person? Isn't it really usually within the month or so, or do they wait?
I'm not actually sure.
Yeah, I'm not either.
I don't know. They
Yeah.
might do it now. They might do it tomorrow.
Yeah,
They
but
might
I'd
do
love
it
to hear everybody
general
else's
conference.
thoughts. Yeah, on the short list. But I just think it was interesting that faithful people were putting this together, and they were going, not, oh, it's just going to be revelation. It's going to be someone. They're like, nope, these are the kind of people they need. Here's the list of those kinds of people. So that's your revelation right there.
Yes, at the outset, we would agree. I think most of us would agree. They're not going to call someone who's on very old
Mm-mm.
because they want someone who can, do their share of the work,
Mm-hmm.
which also militates toward the idea that they'll call someone sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
But also, they don't want someone who's horribly young. So just on the age spectrum, it makes sense that they wouldn't want to call someone too young and inexperienced, and we don't know who this guy really is.
Right.
And we don't want someone who's so old that they can't do their job.
Right.
Immediately, I mean. So
Yeah.
it makes sense, is what I'm saying, that there would be some criteria.
We'll see. We'll report it
Okay.
when it happens, right?
I'm sure we will. Hey, Bill, there's a 2025 Brody Awards. Can I say something at this point?
Please.
I have been circumspect of my own accord, no blood oaths required, that as soon as I found out that we had, through Bill, contracted in a sense, although there's no money changing hands, but we had agreed to host the Brody Awards on Mormonism Live. Then at that point, I recognized that I really had to watch what I said. And I have not nominated anybody. I'm not going to vote for anybody. I never actually have nominated anybody for anything, and I've never voted, at least not for myself. I voted for other people before. But I also, not only am I going to do this time, and I expect Bill's doing similar things, but also I don't want to say anything that's going to, could be possibly interpreted of trying to influence anybody. Because I'm in this position, so is Bill, we're hosts, but we've also been nominated for different awards. So anyway, I just wanted to make that clear, that I do take this seriously. I think it's an honor. I think it's going to be great that we get to have the first ever televised Brody Awards for 2025, though it will be in February, I think, of this year, of 2026, right, Bill?
I actually think it's next week. I think it's January 14th, if I'm not mistaken. That was what I thought. You.
That's
Is
the
it really
voting
all those
cutoff.
votes have to be tallied that quickly?
Yeah, I think there's essentially about a week and a half or 2 weeks of voting.
Well, we'll need to find that out soon, won't we?
I will double check, but I think it's next Wednesday on Mormonism Live is the Brody Awards, as far as I know.
Well, here's the other question I have. If it's that imminent, Bill, and if I can ask you out loud in front of everybody.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which is that the way it's always been is if you cast a vote, then you can find out immediately where the votes are.
Not
You
this
can't
year.
do that anymore, right?
Not this
Okay,
year.
good.
It will be a secret until Radio Free Mormon and myself, Bill Reel, we reveal the winners of the 2025 Brody Awards. And I'll put it in the live chat right now, by the way. The nominations have completed. So now it is time for the actual voting. So folks, if you will go to those links, if you'll also do me a giant favor, everybody, will you copy that and just post it in your social media, share it on Reddit, put it in various places. The goal would be not to have just this audience doing a majority of the voting. It would be to have the entire post-Mormon arena of folks out there all over the place in various platforms and mediums voting on the 2025 Brody Awards. And again, I think that the announcement of who wins that will be on next week's Mormonism Live, January 14th, if I'm not mistaken. So, folks, please share that everywhere. Vote at the website there in the link. 2025 Brody Award voting is going on, and you get to decide who is the ex-Mormon of the year, who has the best podcast, who has the newest blog that's killing it, who are the up-and-comers, who are the old guard that are worthy of these awards being given. It's a ton of fun, the 2025 Brody Awards, and we're excited to be hosting the award ceremony.
Yes, whenever it happens to be. But hopefully it'll be a week from this Wednesday. That would be so exciting.
Yeah.
It would also be great if we could have a link and have people, maybe the winners can come on and give a speech of some sort.
Yeah. As soon as this show ends tomorrow, I will reach out to, I don't know if she likes, I think we had her on. So Carol will, I'll reach out to her and see if she wants to coordinate with me a few days ahead of time so that we can get a hold of at least some of those people and have an opportunity once we know who's winning to have those folks on to accept their victory of their 2025 Brody Award. So that's what a cool thing.
So it won't be like the Oscars where there's a split screen and everybody sits there looking hopeful. And then
that's what I want. I want everybody to be up here. I want everybody to be on the board. And then as soon as we get to the winner, then everybody else, we just put them away.
Just
put
a big
person
X,
comes up and gives
right?
their
That
would be ideal, but I don't know if it's going to go that well.
I like your idea of somehow having a physical something, an award. I think people would even like purchase their own. You know what I mean? You've talked about that before, RFM, where you've gotten mailers that say you've won Lawyer of the Year.
Oh,
Give
yes,
us $29.95, and you can. I think people would do this for the Brody. To have one sitting right back there on your.
I think so, and I found some $25 awards that I'm certainly willing to let go for $50.
I think it could be a big thing is what I'm saying, because the really cool thing about it is as you go in to vote, you're like, well, I haven't heard of them. Well, that sounds amazing. Well, I missed that episode. Well, what about that book? I mean, it's more than voting. It's getting familiar with things that might not have been on your radar for whatever reason and trying something new. So I think it introduces so many things, such variety to the community, which is why we should all share the link and everybody take a look and take notes and, go to links and check all this stuff out.
Yeah. Very well said. Very well said, Rebecca. And now this must be you because you were mentioning these pictures about Jesus taking the wheel.
I have a lot of fun with this. It's true. So this story came in like 2 seconds before the newscast from our good friend, Ron Jorgensen. He's got his finger on the pulse of what's going on, and he'll often send me stuff. And I just thought this was too good not to mention at the very end. So the headline, it's on KSL, is woman traveling 112 miles per hour claims that she was just trying to get to church, right? And I have long suspected this about Utah drivers because we talk about Utah drivers. There are national studies that Utah has terrible drivers. And I call it the I'm a child of God syndrome, right? You have somewhere that's really important for you as a child of God, the most important person to get to. And it's usually the temple. It's a church function. It's taking your kids to young men, young women. There's a lot of driving involved in being a Mormon, and you got to get there. And this woman took it to the extreme. And that's why I said Jesus had better dang well taken that wheel, because she was driving 112 miles an hour on Sunday morning. So it says a 22-year-old woman who claimed that she was trying to get home in time to go to church was arrested and accused of going 112 miles per hour. The woman was spotted by a Utah Highway Patrol trooper on I-15 in Millard County traveling at a high rate of speed before 6 a.m. on Sunday. So
there's like nobody on the roads.
Exactly. And that's why I think she felt she could just let Jesus take that wheel, right? And you got to get home. You've got to go to your meeting. And anyway, let's see. At 6 a.m. Sunday morning, according to police booking affidavit, the trooper said that once he caught up to the vehicle, he turned on his radar and recorded the vehicle speed at 112 miles an hour. The trooper then turned on his emergency lights and pulled the car over. This part is what I thought was shocking. She had 4 passengers with her. Not one of those people said, slow down. They all said, we've got to get to Elders Quorum. They were all on board. I get literally.
Well, the thing I find shocking is that he didn't just look down at his own speedometer.
Oh, dun. See, that's where that belongs. The little dun. That's right. So here's my other picture of Jesus. Like I said, he's just like flooring it. Look at him. Oh my gosh.
Jesus, Little known fact, but he's the only perfect human being to ever live, which means he's also the perfect stunt driver.
I never thought he'd look in this last slide right here. He really looks like he's pulling off some kind of, look at his hair flowing. Yeah.
Perfect
I thought,
hair.
great. Perfect hair, perfect driving. Oh yeah. He can do donuts like nobody's business.
10 and
So
2. Jesus drives 10 and 2.
10 and 2 all the time. That's right. Is that Matthew 10:2? Sorry, making myself laugh. Okay. Goes on to say, I asked her, said the policeman, what she was doing. And she told me that she and the family were, so what, her parents were in the back seat and they were okay with this? We're trying to make it back home for church. I asked her if she knew just how fast she was going. And she said, yes, 110. The affidavit alleges. The woman was then booked into the Millard County Jail for investigation of reckless driving and 4 counts of reckless endangerment. You know the legal process, RFM. Did she make it to church?
I don't know. She was headed home when she was
Right, but I
stopped.
mean, if
apparently.
you're arrested and thrown in jail and booked, can you get out within an hour or so to make it to Relief Society?
No, just getting booked is going to take you a couple hours alone.
Okay, so she missed it.
It's a whole process. That's just getting into the jail.
Dang it. I kind of
Same
picture
thing
maybe
getting
her
out. Getting booked out of jail usually takes 2 or 3 hours, depending.
This is what I'm thinking, but I'm kind of picturing now that I know it's her family, maybe they were all asleep. Like they said, you drive, get us home. And then everyone just fell asleep and they didn't even know. Kind of like Cherry Chase and Vacation, right? They're all like,
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Driving 102 miles an hour is not right. It's obviously you're speeding and speeding badly. But come on, 4 counts of reckless driving. No, reckless driving and 4 counts of reckless endangerment, one for each person, seems like a little bit much.
oh, that's what it is. Okay, that makes sense. But I think you're right. Early morning, there's nobody on that road. And I thought maybe she just lost track of how fast she was going, but she clearly knew how fast, and it was all for the Lord. Get to church.
Yeah, besides, she was only going 110 miles an hour, not 112.
That makes all the difference. And that's all I
Oh,
have.
yes, that's right.
Yeah,
So
back to
is
you.
that all the pictures you have? I had asked if you had a picture of Jesus on a Harley.
No, I can make you one though.
I would love that. Because
I'll
he
make
doesn't need a helmet. You know why?
Oh no. Why?
Because it doesn't make any. First off, he's never going to wreck.
He
Second
already,
off, even if he did, he wouldn't get hurt. I'm sorry.
he's already taken the wheel. Jesus, take the wheel. He already is.
That's right.
Yeah.
And on the radar, Rebecca, what do you and Landon have prepared for us tomorrow night, Tuesday, on Mormonish?
Oh, yes. Let me go to my next slide. There we go. Okay. This is actually a repeat, but it was such a good one. And it was 2 years ago. And it's even more relevant than it is now. Or than it was then. Sorry. I'm like, low blood sugar. I need to have
It's
dinner.
more relevant today than it was then.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. You should do my pitch here. Anyway, everybody's talking about a new Book of Mormon coming out. I think we might have mentioned it first here on the newscast when they let us read the KJV Bible. And I said, now that they're getting rid of that old timey language, are they going to redo the Book of Mormon? We talked about this. I saw a little short from Steve Pinecker the other day who said, oh, he knows it's coming. So I just don't want anybody to forget this version of the Book of Mormon that somebody pitched a couple years ago here on Mormonish, and it's called the ISHIT You Not Book of Mormon. And basically what you do is every time they say, and it came to pass, you say, and I SHIT you not. Anyway, we go through some of the history of language and Bibles, and we read some passages from this particular version of the Book of Mormon. And right now, I'm just wondering, is anything on the table for the Book of Mormon? We'll have to wait and see. But a lot of people are saying a new one is on its way. So this will be Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Time.
Sounds fascinating. By the way, we need to keep tabs on our friend Steve Pinecker, because last month he said that this month in January, which has just begun, a faithful Mormon podcaster was going to get excommunicated. So we have to keep tabs on that and watch to see if he's giving us the real scoop.
Yeah, he's becoming kind of a prophet. He likes to put things out there like, I promise this will happen, right?
Yeah, he's becoming kind of a rumor monger.
Oh, there's a fine line. Isn't there a fine line? I think
Well, with a prophet, the rumors are supposed to come true.
Or you just say you weren't faithful enough for the rumor to come true. That works.
I was speaking as a rumor monger. I'm sorry. Okay, so and then we got Wednesday on Mormonism Live.
Yeah, I recently posted an interview alleged to have occurred with Joseph Smith Sr. by a person by the last name of Lapham. And the interview is way late. It's like 40 years late. But also, Dan Vogel's done a ton of research on this paper, on this interview, and makes a ton of notes, which we'll go over Wednesday. We're going to attempt to parse out what parts we can trust, which parts Lapham is maybe misremembering, and we'll use all of Dan Vogel's expertise to help us get there. I'm sure, Dan's usually in the chat. I'm sure he'll be there this week as well. So he can add his comments and help us sort of figure this out. But I'll note, again, there are reasons to be skeptical of it. And there are, I think, a lot of good reasons to give it credibility. And we'll discuss that Wednesday with the audience. Let them be the ones at the end who make the decisions about what parts are legitimate history and what parts are late misremembered remembrances. And it should be a lot of fun. But I thought there were so many cool things shared by Lapham about what he is recounting that Joseph Smith Sr. said that I don't think you're going to want to miss this.
Can I just say, I'm so glad that you're doing this, because this has been out there for a long time, but it just does not get enough attention. And if it's accurate, July 1829, it is the first kind of interview about what the heck is all this about? And it's before they got their story straight, right? It's Joseph's dad going, oh yeah, it's great. There's this treasure guardian and he's covered with blood and he's laying on the plate, before Joseph had a chance to go, so I'm really excited for this. It's going to be an awesome episode.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. This is going to be good. And this is the Radio Free Mormon that went up Saturday on a premiere LDS Church Changing Book of Mormon to Fool Africans. This is also under the heading of Following the Evidence Where It Leads, which I hope is what everybody watches RFM and associated shows with Mormon Discussions Podcasts, Inc. for, is to find out what the facts are, where those lead to the best of our ability to put 2 and 2 together and approximate 4. Then Friday night, Mormonism After Dark. Bill Reel and I will be here in the lounge with all the cool post-Mormons and just the cool cats generally. This is where we hang out starting at 8 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time for an hour and a half or 2 hours of just relaxing and shooting the SHI. How do you spell that again, Rebecca? SHIT.
The I Shit You Not Book of Mormon, right?
On a Friday evening. Yes, exactly. Yep. Thank you for your help with that.
Yeah. Bring an adult beverage, join the cool cats, have some laid back conversation. We'll chuckle a little bit. We'll share some interesting things that are happening this week. And who knows where the conversation will go, because you're in charge of where that happens, where that goes. So folks, if you join the show, you call in, you come into studio, you get to tell us what your thoughts are, and that will lead the conversation in an entirely different direction. So don't miss out.
No, please don't. And I want to tell you that this show is rapidly becoming one of my favorites, because it is the place where at the end of the week and after the end of a podcasting week where we've been podcasting, other people have been podcasting, things have been happening that things have been happening that you don't know because they happen behind the scenes. And this is where, to the extent that we are able, and we go pretty far, we tell you what's been going on behind the scenes. So you get to know the real scoop on things and who's saying what about who.
Yeah, I would say we're going to spill the tea, but it's probably not tea in the cup. So don't miss out, Friday, 8 p.m.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So be with us there. Oh, this is the end slide. The Mormon Kissing Bandit is Radio Free Mormon. I'll try and have another episode up on Saturday. That has become my pattern. And I've got some great ideas about it. And I think this one we're going to be doing one of the very last chapters of the Light on Truth letter. We're almost done with that thing. And it's like, if this were a letter, he's got so many chapters at the end. Seriously, he's got like conclusion, he's got afterward, he's got epilogue, he's got, but there's one more thing I want to say. If this were a real letter, it would be the equivalent of PS, PPS, PPPS. He just can't stop. Or he can't stop his computer, one or the other. Anyway, but we're gonna try and wrap this up if we can. It may take 1, it may take 2, and then we're gonna have the big blowout podcast where we examine them all. and figure out what the heck it is that we have created here, what Austin's created, what we've done, and how they compare with each other. So everybody, Rebecca, Bill, thanks so much for joining me on tonight's newscast. Everybody out there, thank you so much for joining us. Please hit like before you go. Please hit subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. We look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the Mormon Newscast. Good night.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.